Hello and welcome to episode 54 of Infrastructure Matters. I'm Krista Case, a research director here at the Futurum Group, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Stephen Dickens. Stephen, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I don't know whether people would associate lovely and
the
me,
same
but thank you. I'll take it.
Well, it's always a lovely way to kind of start my day here, so it's chatting with you. So definitely appreciate you kind of having the conversation today.
And we're back into the craziness after the summer break. Campbell and I recorded last week. Conference season is go, and we're off and running. It's crazy.
It is, I know. And Stephen, you were mentioning you in particular are barely going to be on the ground for the next couple months, right? What are some of the big events you have coming up?
So I've got, I'm off to BMC's event. I'm off to Red Hat. I'm off to reInvent just before Thanksgiving. I've got an IBM Analyst Summit. It's the next few weeks are just crazy. But that's what we love. We love just sort of being out on the road, talking to all these vendors. I've just come back from Oracle's Cloud World this week, which is a great event. It's that's the job, being on the road and being at these events.
It is, and nothing replaces the face-to-face communication. But
yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of Oracle, I know, Stephen, one topic that's been very big in the news is the partnership between AWS and Oracle. So why don't you kind of kick us off with that one? What did you see and hear maybe at the event this past week? And what are some of your takeaways from the partnership?
Well, the headline for me is that we now live in a hybrid multi-cloud world. You go back 5 or 6 years, Oracle and AWS were mortal enemies. Oracle and Microsoft were enemies. Google and Oracle were enemies. You wind forward to the world we're in today. All of the hyperscalers have got on-prem offerings with satellites and outposts. Oracle with Cloud at Customer. You look at the relationship that Oracle inked with AWS, which now completes the set. They've got partnerships with Google, Microsoft, and AWS. This is Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI, actually sitting in an AWS data center. So this isn't, I can buy some software and run it on AWS kit. This is Oracle infrastructure sitting in a rack in AWS, which is just fantastic for clients. It's fantastic for AWS and fantastic for Oracle. Larry Ellison, who absolutely needs a shout out. I had to Google during the keynote how old this guy is. He looked fantastic. He's 79 years old, did the keynote, put on Matt Garman, the CEO of AWS, onto the stage, which the analyst community can't remember the last time Larry did a walk-on with somebody else. He just doesn't do that. So that was the significance of this. Talking about the partnership, and I got some time with Karan Bhatta, who runs OCI during the event, to go deep. The significance for me of this is if you've now got Oracle database running on OCI infrastructure in AWS and you want to move that database to Azure, that's not an AWS to Azure egress fee charge. It's OCI to OCI.
I see. Yep.
So the significance of that really dropped on the analyst community, and we spent the entire sort of chatter was the ability to be in a multi-cloud, the ability to be able to have a strategy where you've got a common layer, which is your Oracle database, your Exadata, your Exascale, running on OCI, and be able to have that data portability and that data management. Maybe there's not an Azure instance in the country where you need that. And maybe there is an AWS one. Maybe there's a Google instance, but there's not an Azure instance. You can have that common layer and that common data management fabric, which was a word that sort of Pat Moorhead from More Insights and Strategy sort of coined to fit around this phrase, that kind of data fabric, and be able to move data across that common OCI backbone. That's crucial. So absolutely fascinating announcement. I think it took everybody, well, not by surprise, I don't think, because they've been doing this for a while with Azure and with Google, but I think obviously AWS completes the set.
It does. And that really hits the nail on the head, Stephen. So, in my kind of space, I've seen that for really the past 5 or 6 years, more from the standpoint of, kind of recovering data and having like that flexibility in terms of data management, but it is still a data management and a data migration issue, which is exactly what you're speaking to. Customers want that flexibility. They do not want to be locked into that one specific provider for, as you're referencing, maybe pricing between the cloud providers is going to fluctuate, different capabilities and functionalities. Maybe it is an issue of data sovereignty or resiliency of the infrastructure. So definitely very powerful. And then
it's interesting,
the egress piece, as you're mentioning too, that's really kind of the kicker, in that equation from a cost perspective.
Well, it was interesting on pricing. The price is going to be the same depending on which cloud you're in. So the price for Oracle OCI running Exadata will be the same in AWS, the same in Azure, and the same in Google. So they've democratized it from a cost point of view. The solution is the same. The tech stack is the same. You just choose which cloud provider you want to connect. There's going to be connections out to Bedrock, Amazon's AI service. There's connections out to other to Gemini and to Microsoft and some of their Copilot stuff. So if you want to be leveraging AI, it's the classic conversation we've had on this podcast a number of times, bringing the data to the AI or the AI to the data. Oracle's just made that a non-issue because it's in Oracle. It's on the highly tuned and optimized Exadata infrastructure. It's got an OCI wrap around it, but it's sitting in AWS. Fantastic. Yep. I mean, clients have been asking this. They had State Street up on the stage, and Larry kind of stitched up Matt Garvett, which was kind of funny to watch. I don't know whether Matt realized what was kind of happening to him because they'd announced that it was in a certain number of data centers at launch. And Larry goes to the State Street guy, well, how many countries do you want this in? And the guy goes, well, we operate in 50. And then he turns to Matt and goes, well, I suppose that's our roadmap done then. So it kind of was. Now, whether Larry knew that in advance and was pushing Matt on stage to commit to the roadmap, or maybe I'm just reading a conspiracy into it. It was kind of funny. But I mean, all joking aside, created a ripple, hit the press. Absolutely. I spoke to the Wall Street Journal about it. They were that interested that they called me during the event and wanted to dig into it. So also at the event, Oracle had their earnings. Tuesday, I think it was. Just got to say, 9 days after year end, they announced their earnings. I need to go back and look, but that is ridiculously fast.
Absolutely.
Obviously, that's driven by NetSuite and Fusion and their sort of back-end tools that they obviously sell. But Safra Katz talked about it in the keynote. The speed at which they can close their books is frankly impressive for me. Key number that stood out, I think it was 44% growth of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. You look at where the others in the market are, they're sort of high 20s. So they're growing faster than their peers. I think we're now talking about 4 hyperscalers, not 3.
That was going to be my question for you was, we hear about the big 3 and then the other cloud providers, tend to be a bit distant from them. But so Oracle catching up. I mean, where do you think they're going to be sitting, call it 18, 24 months from now?
Well, I think both things can be true at the same time. I think the other hyperscalers can be growing at 30%, and Oracle can be growing at greater than that, which they're doing today. Why do I think two truths? So I don't see it as they're taking market share from AWS. I don't frame it that way. Public cloud adoption in some markets is still single digits. Financial services are in low single digits of how much percentage of their infrastructure is on cloud. You look at you look at Oracle's install base, it's probably the top 5,000 to 20,000 organizations in the world. It's those big enterprise names. They're going to be the slowest adopters of cloud. So Oracle can go and get that market share without taking it off AWS. So I think Oracle can grow faster than their peers because they're exposed to the Citibanks, the Wells Fargos, the Barclays, the HSBCs, like they have been for 40 years.
Yes.
And grow. And with the new announcements, they'll grow with AWS, they'll grow with Google, they'll grow with Azure. So it's really dynamic in the market. So fantastic set of earnings. Great to see Larry sort of bossing it on the keynote stage at age 79, and a fantastic announcement with AWS would be the summary.
That's amazing. So maybe we'll continue with that AWS theme. I know, Stephen, another topic that you wanted to touch on was AWS and kind of what they're doing in the UK. So do you want to kind of double click on that?
Yeah, well, I've been talking about Sovereign Cloud for a while on the podcast here. Typically, when I cover one of those Sovereign Cloud announcements, this is Oracle in Japan, this is IBM in Canada, this is AWS in Germany. We've seen a raft of those. And if you search on our website with the word sovereign on them, you'll pull up all my coverage because I did that the other day. I'm being consistent on what I call them. So if you want to search, but I've probably written 7 or 8 research notes this year on sovereign cloud deployments. The interesting thing for me was the size of the investment here. This is £8 billion, just over $10 billion. That's 10x the size of the investments. Now, was this new investment? Was this just counting what they were going to invest over the next 5 years? I think whichever way you frame it, this is a huge investment in a key market for AWS. This got sort of attention from the local the government in the UK, various members of parliament jumping on to sort of talk about the investment. I'm in the process of writing a research note, and I've got a call with AWS that I'm trying to schedule to sort of understand more. But what stood out for me is just the size and scale. Obviously, London is a key market globally for financial services. We talked about cloud penetration in financial services markets, in the context of the last segment. I think this is just a huge investment and good news for the market in the UK for AWS, and a good news story for AWS around their commitment to deploying sovereign cloud-based workloads.
Absolutely. And as you're referencing, both absolutely help to speed adoption in these highly regulated industries like financial services, for example. So it's interesting how the two announcements kind of are very correlated and likely will kind of feed each other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So continuing to pull on that kind of cloud thread, one piece of news that I covered recently was the fact that Salesforce plans to acquire a company called Ownbone Company, which they do backup and data protection primarily for Salesforce, for $1.9 billion, actually. So obviously a pretty hefty price tag. And from my perspective, there's a few things that are very interesting about this. So Salesforce, years ago, they had some backup and data protection capabilities. They decided to move away from that because naturally that's not kind of the core business and functionality of what Salesforce does. But their customers are kind of reeling them right back into it. Due to the customer demand, Salesforce kind of entered the data protection space again with some of their own capabilities that they built in-house. And now they're announcing that they're going to acquire a company that is, you can make a case that they're sort of the specialist when it comes to protecting Salesforce applications in sort of that SaaS hosted backup as a service type model.
That was going to be my question. Is Own Backup a Salesforce kind of only backup solution, or is it kind of in the Convol rubric, kind of VM type space and a bit more general purpose? When I saw this on the docket, that was my question.
Yep. So they started focusing on Salesforce exclusively. Right. They have extended their workload coverage to a number of other SaaS applications. I believe even some on-premises databases and file servers. But what I'm thinking, Stephen, is that assuming the acquisition does close, I think that they will kind of pivot back to focusing exclusively on Salesforce. I don't believe that Salesforce wants to make this broad spread play in the data protection space. Mm-hmm. What I believe is happening is that Salesforce customers are asking for this functionality as an extension of their Salesforce contract. And so Salesforce is kind of realizing that it does need to step up to the table and provide some of these capabilities. I don't expect that they're going to be, really trying to put pressure on, as you mentioned, your Commvaults and VMs of the world, though, of course, they're going to coexist all together in the same ecosystem. So that's going to be interesting. Will Salesforce how much will Salesforce offer in terms of maybe some APIs for these third-party data protection software companies to kind of, integrate with the Salesforce own solution, things of that nature. Where I do think that they may continue to expand. So Own has been investing not only in kind of additional workloads, but also in some additional capabilities such as, data governance and compliance and some capabilities around cyber resiliency. That I would anticipate would be smart for Salesforce to continue that drumbeat, just because those capabilities are becoming table stakes as part of a data protection offering because they're so critical to that data privacy, data resiliency story. So that was sort of, some of my big takeaways. Again, I do think that it's interesting. We've seen this in the backup as a service market that really customers they're recognizing that they need that kind of enterprise grade functionality. I think we're at a point in the market where customers realize that the recycle bin isn't an effective data protection policy, especially for something like Salesforce, when you have these implementations that are highly customized. Yep. You have very critical CRM data, for example. So it's they're recognizing that they need more, but they're wanting to kind of subscribe to that through their application provider if they can. So it'll be interesting to see.
To turn it on rather than, hey, I need to go somewhere else into a different. It's just fully embedded in your Salesforce instance. Do you want to pay for backup? It's the kind of, as I described it, you want fries with that type solution.
Exactly. And so I do think there will need to be some connectivity into some of these other, data protection offerings. Enterprises are already accustomed to working with multiple different data protection solutions. You typically have something that's going to protect kind of your virtualized environment. Maybe you're working with a different provider or two for some of these SaaS applications. So there's already a bit of fragmentation, maybe 3 or 4 vendors already existing in large enterprises. So if this is another one, it's something that I would say, at least from an IT ops side, they're kind of already used to working with it from that perspective. But I do think that the more, kind of the own backup solution can feed into kind of the broader perspective, especially as we start thinking about some of those cyber resiliency capabilities I was referencing, data governance and things of that nature. That's going to be important in order to get that holistic view.
Yeah, that makes sense. Notice the next one up on the docket was Druva, so I'll be the host for a minute. Tell us a little bit more around what they're doing in the AI space.
Yeah, so Druva, they have a chatbot that they call Drew, and what Druva has done is they've launched what they call Drew Investigate, and what that does is it sort of allows customers to have some insight and analysis into the backup data for example, to potentially detect that threats are occurring, things of that nature. My take on it, and I had a conversation with TechTarget, I also had a conversation with Dhruva. I got the question, kind of how much of a draw is an AI chatbot to a data protection solution? And based on our research, so we actually did ask cybersecurity decision makers as a part of our intelligence data here at Futurum. And what we found was that only, I think it was 10 or 12% of respondents indicated that sort of, a chatbot was really the attraction. But what I think it is it's really about what the chatbot enables. So it's more about the insight that the chatbot unlocks. So it's about the ability to maybe more quickly sift through data and make new correlations that they wouldn't have been able to make before, to do things like improve their ability to detect that an attack has occurred.
Yeah.
Or
so that's the kind of chatbot, more what the chatbot's doing.
Exactly.
Is it interesting, you think?
Exactly, 100%.
Makes sense.
And yeah, and it's when you think about, as I was kind of talking about, just especially if there are multiple solutions that are existing in the environment, and also just how fragmented data is these days. So we have multi-hybrid cloud environments where data is existing, as you were talking about when we were discussing Oracle, data is existing across all these different environments. Then if we have, for example, a zero trust approach where we're trying to really segment data as much as we can to inhibit that malicious access, it becomes difficult to get that centralized visibility. So if a chatbot can kind of help to unlock that, enriching the insights for IT and security teams. And actually on that topic, I think that one other thing that a chatbot can do, but again, it's kind of from my perspective more about the outcome, is it really can provide insights that the IT and security teams can use to start collaborating together more. And they have some more of a common language to start to speak for cyber resiliency, cybersecurity, things of that nature. So it's really interesting.
There's value in that, if nothing else.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's an interesting announcement. We're seeing a number of data protection companies are introducing similar functionalities from kind of a chatbot perspective. And I just think kind of that little spin on it in terms of it's more about what does it enable you to do. That, again, we got that feedback that I think is interesting and kind of tied in there.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yep.
Well, one topic left. I think it's me.
Yes. Yep.
I'll try and focus my inner Camberley and get all storage here. Just so IBM launched its 10th generation of the venerable DS8000 range, so the DS8K. This is the high-end storage. I think the headlines were doubles the throughput of PCIe Gen 4. They're bringing NVMe flash drives that bring a boost in performance. There's advanced ransomware protection via AI, enhanced RAID and security management, continued sort of market-leading integration with the mainframe. So I think continual drumbeat, nothing sort of revolutionary here, just IBM doing what it does best with the DS8K, focusing on those customer requirements where we need better performance, we need better availability, we need this thing to be the home of our sort of mission critical data, and we need this to connect to our most valuable systems. And one of those is obviously the mainframe. So if you can connect it to the mainframe in the most seamless way, connectivity into the IBM mainframe CyberVault technology is an example there. A seamless integration. I talked about that. So I think if you're a DS8K customer, you're probably going to upgrade. You're probably going to go and get onto the 10th generation. And if you're, comparing this against a Hitachi or a Dell with their former EMC offerings, you're going to be, I don't think it radically changes that competitive landscape. But what it does do is continue to demonstrate that IBM's innovating in this space, bringing more value add, and been focused on the customer requirements. It was a very kind of evolutionary briefing that they talked us through it. These are the themes we're getting from customers. It's all about security. It's all about performance. It's around availability. Ransomware is important.
Yep.
Some of the operational requirements of regulations like DORA. So as I say, nothing kind of that made you go, wow, they've completely changed the landscape, but continuing to drive the value where people need it absolutely the most.
Yep.
So Camille would have done a better job of that than me, but I'm not a storage expert. So
I think you did a fantastic job.
I try. I pinch it.
And I think one thing that's interesting about that to me, Stephen, with my own personal bias, is hearing some of these security and resiliency capabilities alongside kind of the speed and performance, right? So it's, and kind of what you're describing as, this was an evolutionary, as opposed to kind of a radical, if for lack of a better way to describe it, update. So to me, that just really underscores the fact that when we look at not only kind of the data protection environment, but also production storage, the fact that those security and availability capabilities are more table stakes than they've ever been before. They have to be there, in order to meet what customers need to do. Yep.
This is the crown jewels of data storage. This is the stuff that if it goes down, the business is the front page story on tomorrow's newspaper. This is the most mission critical transactional systems, the tier 1 or tier 0 storage, whichever, all of those things. This is what a DS8000 does. So absolutely. That customers, I think, aren't looking for revolution there. They're looking for, I've got real hard requirements around performance, availability, security, ransomware protection. Give me that. Keep turning the crank, IBM, and I'll buy your next box. That's how I took this. So, I mean, that we live in a dynamic world where every product manager wants to tell us that they're sort of changing the world and fixing world peace with their product offering launch. It wasn't one of those, but actually I think that's what customers will want from this release from IBM rather than revolution.
Especially a company like IBM, they're known, they're trusted.
Yeah.
We don't need to kind of necessarily make this huge fanfare. We need to kind of just say, we're listening to you, we're delivering what you need, and we're going to continue to be there and kind of support those requirements.
Trusted partner status.
Yeah.
Trusted partner status for your tier 1 storage is the way to look at this, I think.
Absolutely. And with that, Stephen, I think we're just about at the top of our time here. Thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation as always.
How did we sneak that into half an hour? I've got no idea.
I never know how we do it, but somehow we managed to. So thank you so much to the audience for joining us today. Again, this is Infrastructure Matters. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes as they come out. And make sure to engage with us in the comments. We'd love to hear from you, hear your feedback. What are some of the topics that you want to see covered? And with that, we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you so much.